Hello, everyone. Bill and Brian here with Energy Rogue. Here we are for our weekly update. Well, listen, we're going to be talking about some things about natural gas. So I hope you're tuning in. And Brian, do we want to roll that logo?
Yeah, we'll roll it so that everybody has a chance to. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the base case scenarios for natural gas for the remainder of 2024. Am I right on that?
You
Did I
bet.
get
Listen,
that right?
I think that's exactly right. If we only had something that would a presentation that had that title on it.
Okay, we're gonna go through kind of a boring presentation type behavior, but we're going to go through presentation style. And embedded in here, we're going to talk about kind of where we are now, where we might be going, and why. So when we look at the forward prices, and these are forward contracts based on the New York Mercantile Exchange, NYMEX, and for the record, we are not financial advisors. This is not a recommendation to buy or sell any commodity or price or instrument or any of that. So you can read all the disclaimers down below, or I think YouTube pushed it off to the side. So when we look at the futures contracts, we are $2.50 or lower through October. So the reason why we are that low is we are exiting the warmest winter on record per per NOAA. NOAA has a record back to, I think this is 1895. And the last time that it was this warm was 2015-16, and we had the same weather dynamics and we had the same demand. So feel free to ask questions. We will get to the questions at the end. So feel free to ask questions. LinkedIn, YouTube, we see those questions live. Twitter, we haven't seen questions live. So feel free to ask questions along the way. But again, 250 or lower through October. And part of the reason that we're there is because per NOAA, we had the warmest winter on record, thus creating the largest storage overhang since 2016. So, and 2016 is what the last time that we had, quote unquote, per NOAA, the warmest winter on record. So, but I want you to notice something. Even though we had the warmest winter on record, we actually did draw down further than 2015-16. So that tells us something in an indirect way that says, even though we had a really, really warm winter, which impacted demand, we still had solid demand. And a lot of that has to do with the electric growth. A lot of that has to do with all the different utilizations and demand increases that we've had since 2016.
So, Brian, what's the largest new power hungry industry that's going on right now?
Power hungry. Oh, data centers and artificial intelligence.
That's right. The data centers for artificial intelligence. They are creating more demand than actual population growth, and maybe even more than electric vehicles.
Yep. And so that's one distinct difference. In 8 years, we've had a dramatic increase in data centers. That increases our base demand. And that's part of the reason what you just said, Bill, is super important. Now,
how'd that happen?
How'd that happen? How'd that happen? Well, now one of the things on the supply side to take a look at, and again, feel free to ask questions along the way. In December, we had the highest production, record production at 105.8 BCF a day per the weekly report on EIA. That's massive. And that grew from 99 BCF a day in 2023, early 2023. But I want to note something. The natural gas prices have responded negatively. There's been producer responses through curtailments, through rig drops, and completion curtailments. Right now, on April 24th, we are producing less than we did on April 24th in 2023. So if you think about that, we have traveled down from 105.8 to 98, 99. It's kind of bouncing between those. Now, some of these are curtailments, which means if price responds, you're going to see production respond relatively quickly.
Right.
So where are we right now? Where are we right now? Why are we below $2? We're exiting the warmest winter on demand. Storage is at the highest level since 2016, and production reached the highest level in December. However, footnote, we're now lower than we were a year ago today on production. And that is because of every month production declines. So if we start with 100 BCF and we do not bring on any new production, we would produce the following month 96.6 BCF a day. If we brought on 0, and that means that the month after that, we would produce what, 93.2
That's right.
BCF a day.
So we're talking about new production. We're not talking about just you have a base production that's going on, but we're talking about new production.
Yep. And so every month, and it has to do with physics. You have so much ground or so much pressure underground that when production comes out of the ground, as the production comes out of the ground, there's less pressure pushing the molecules up. So that means it's going to be less productive every single month after it, and new production declines at a faster rate.
Right. And so there's some exceptions to this. I mean, but very few. And the ones that are exceptions are only because of infrastructure. If you would produce them at their full blown capability, they would decline even faster than these do. We just don't have the infrastructure to take 40 million a day per well, in Appalachia. So it's so the decline is steady and it's constant, and it's not just natural gas. You have the same thing in crude oil as well.
Yep. So we have dropped. If decline is 3.4 and we bring on 0 production, that means we will lose 3.4 BCF a day of production every single month. We're currently bringing on less than 3.4 BCF a day in new production, which means we are set to decline. Now, is it a lot under 3.4? No, it's not. But production is not accelerating, it's not increasing. And so with that new production dropping below 3.4, and you have rig drops, and you have deferred completions, and you have curtailments, it is not going to take much to stretch this into into the mid 90s, which would reconcile. We'll get to the storage part a little bit later, but when we look at this, what does this mean? Marcellus, Utica, Haynesville are declining 300,000 a day every single month, and Permian is still adding production, but they're tapped out on capacity, so there's not much to do. That Permian's actually priced at negative. So on the supply side, highest level production in December. However, today is lower than last April. Producer response, rig drops, deferred completions, and curtailments. Production has dropped below last year's levels. Declines will start to creep in. So now let's look at the demand dynamics. So on the demand side of the equation, we had a weak winter demand from the warmest winter on record per NOAA. Summer heat is expected to be intense. As a matter of fact, ERCOT just sent out a notification about electricity and peaking and curtailments on the electric side to their customers. And that summer, if we have a hot summer, that means less gas is going to go into storage. And what that means is that we will start to see a price response. And another thing to keep in the back of our mind is an active hurricane season, because that can and will impact the largest industrial demand sector and LNG exports. And back to the demand dynamics. Outside of 2 weeks, we had a 2-week stretch in the United States where we had this massive, massive cold, where we actually withdrew the most that we've ever withdrawn from storage. Outside of that, the winter was non-existent from heating demand. And that has to do with the warm weather. We are expecting a lot of storms later this year. That's going to be important. We're going to do some more content around that. But the reason why that's important is out of 99 BCF a day, we export via LNG 14 BCF a day, and 12 of that comes from the Gulf of Mexico. And in addition to that, what happens on the crude oil side out of the Gulf of Mexico, Bill?
Yeah, we're exporting. We're not only exporting, we're exporting about 6 million barrels a day, but we're importing about 4 million barrels a day. So that can affect 10 million, a net 10 million barrel a day difference.
Yep. So, so listen, the active hurricane season will impact LNG, and it will impact crude oil markets. And that's something to watch, because most of these export facilities on the LNG side are in the Gulf of Mexico along the Texas, Louisiana Gulf Coast. Now let's look at storage.
By the way, that also affects Mexico's exports in their LNG and crude oil as well.
Yes. So the storage dynamics, we're at the highest levels since I'm gonna hop over here to our storage charts. And by the way, for those that don't know us, I am Brian. This is Bill. Wait, wrong way. This is Bill. I was pointing the wrong way.
There you go.
This is Bill. We started a company called Energy Rogue, and you can find us at energyrogue.com. And we have a service subscription level. And if you are interested, you can navigate to our page and just click on register. We have 2 tiers.
Won't you share that screen?
Oh, yeah, that would be helpful.
Yes, there you
go. So we have 2 tiers. One is Rogue Edge, which will give you access to all the charts that we're talking about right now. And we have 150 charts on supply, demand, imports, exports, storage, stocks for natural gas, crude oil, refined products, NGLs, as well as electricity, with rigs and asset maps for the United States. In addition to all those charts, you get a daily email, weekly video recap, weekly PDFs, and daily support and resistance numbers for those traders out there. And then insight into potential future market moves are woven in there. That's only $89 a month. If you sign up for our annual plan, you will save $10 a month. Rogue Premium is designed for those that want to step to the next level and see and interact with us, have us talk about your plan, whether or not you are consuming energy, selling energy, and how to economically benefit off of that. Feel free to email us at rogue@energyrogue.com. Would be happy to connect with you. And if you would like to meet with us, we can talk with you about this plan. But the Rogue Premium also gives you access to our premium private Discord channel, where we have people that from the producing side of the business, from the consumption side of the business, from the midstream side of the business, hedge funds, international. We are on 5 different continents and 32 out of 50 states. So it gives you a broad array, because here's the thing, we postulate what might happen to the energy markets. It's important to get all opinions and a lot of different opinions, not just ours. So we're going to offer ours, but that's part of the reason that we built this platform, so that you can access all of these charts, But what I was going to look at on the natural gas side, there's discussion of 4 TCF scenarios. And the reason why that's important is the last time that we got 4 TCF, let's take a look at this, 2016 and 2015. So 2015, 2016 were the last times that we did that. And no surprise, that was when we had the old record right there.
Right.
So that was the old record, and that's part of the reason that was super important. Many of the analysts that we follow, that we listen to, are projecting 3.9 TCF at the moment. Why I don't expect 3.9 TCF, and I'll step into my logic why. But there are concerns of international LNG cargoes because European storage is 60% full and Asia is still wanting cheaper supply. So before I move on, Bill, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think on the European side, I think they're also doing a lot of construction of new facilities, which could actually increase their demand there. Realizing also that their storage still only meets about 25% of their total demand. If they used all of their storage, it's still only 25% of their total annual demand. Now, it's obviously storage is always used at what time and how much at what time, but so I think that there's still a chance for a significant growth in Europe as far as LNG. Asia is always a mystery to me because it seems like just when you think you get them figured out, they do something that you wouldn't expect. But they're always going to be shopping the deal. So they're looking for, whether it's crude oil or natural gas, they're always going to be shopping the deal. And right now they're trying to shop the deal on LNG because of the cheap gas prices in the U.S.
Yep. And for those that don't track, European gas storage is centralized, and there's a lot of good information out there. But you can see based on the color how full they are. Austria is 76% full. Europe, the European Union is 62%, and we're just starting the injection season. So that is part of the reason that when we look at the 4 TCF scenarios and we look at what can happen here in the United States, and feel free to ask questions along the way, because any projection here, there's probably at least 5 different variables back behind it that could change it significantly.
Also, there's also a lot of discussion about whether we have 4 TCF of storage space.
Yeah,
that's always a conversation, and what kind of storage space it is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not just one kind.
So again, our storage overhang is the largest since 2016, but when we look at the storage projections and we model a couple of things, there's two variables that we look at. And again, we're not financial advisors. Do your own research, and this is not a recommendation to buy or sell any stock, commodity, or futures contract. But there is a model that takes us to 4.4 TCF, which is beyond the capacity, isn't it, Bill?
There's a real question on that. If it's beyond it, even if we can get 4.4 in the storage, it's going to be in places that we don't normally store, and therefore they won't come out as easily as it usually does. That means we're storing in depleted fields, and those depleted fields are not like storage caverns. They don't come back out as fast as it goes in.
Right. And so you kind of get a diminishing return, but if we run a case at 101.1 BCF a day of production and 11 BCF a day of LNG exports, we come out at 4.4 TCF. If we model 98 BCF a day and 12.5 BCF a day, we come out at 3.4. If we drop to 96 BCF a day and average 14 BCF a day of LNG exports, we now get 2.7. So I'm going to walk through a couple of things real quick. So first, on the supply side of the equation, let's take a look at this. And this is using Rogue Edge, which again, you can subscribe for only $89 a month. If you want to learn a little bit more about it, there are links below or to the side. Would love to see and talk with you. But when we look at these levels, pardon me, there we go. All right, when we look at these levels, one of the things that we're taking a look at, one is the case of 101 BCF a day, okay? One case is looking at 98 BCF a day. And then if you look at 96 BCF a day, now let's take us back over time and let's see when the last time we had these levels. So now let's go back and redraw those lines. So we had 96 BCF a day, which we were producing less than that in July of 2022. 98, which we produced a little bit in 2022. We produced up to that and then back down to that, and then 101, which is right here. So this is the reason that so many analysts are projecting a 4 TCF model. 11 BCF a day is unlikely. Let's take a look at that one. So 101, 98, 96. When we look at the decline curve and we look at new production, and again, remember 3.4 TCF, we are currently producing, here's the 3.4 line. We are not adding new production in excess of this 3.4. So that is going to be key, and that means we're going to start to increase our decline, or we're going to start dropping. So now let's look at LNG, right? Let's see what the average has looked like on that side of the equation. And let's take it back here. So when we were looking at these modeled levels, we modeled 14 up here, 12.5, which was our base case. Was it our base case? 12.5, and then 14, and then what was the low one? 11. So when we look at all these numbers, 12.5 seems like a reasonable case. And would you agree with that, Bill?
You know, I think so, but here's the bottom line. When you got an LNG facility, you want it running full out. You don't idle it back. You don't do anything. You don't really worry. You want it moving through most of the time. And so most of the time, the only thing that causes these volumes to go down, because the current capacity right now is about 14.2, if I remember correctly. What causes these to idle down is things like what happened in Freeport, where they had a little a problem. It's mechanical, so things do break. But I would think that we're probably better. I would expect 13 to 13 in like 13.3 maybe would be a more solid answer when you're talking about averaging for the summer.
Drop us a comment what you think when you look at the LNG and what you think when you look at supply and what we're looking at. Drop us a comment, because we're going to do this live right now. So if we take the base case at 98 and we look at a 12.5, which I think is conservative, that means we exit the storage season at 3.4. Let's take a look and see what that looks like, a 3.4. Let me take this off, this off. Let's see what a 3.4 looks like. The last time we were below that was 2018. And every other year is well above that. So we would flip from being 600 BCF a day over to probably 200 BCF or 300 BCF under within a season. So a lot is going to depend on this number right here. which is going to be production, because there is a case to where we go down to 96 BCF a day. And if we do that, we're going to be struggling to exit the injection season above 3. So
that number
I
on
think-
production is going to be very dependent on price.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as long as we're below 250, I'm not sure that production number is going to increase.
Yep.
And we just showed that right now the futures has got us below 250 through October. So I think there's a high likelihood that we could be right around 3.2, I think, on the exit.
3.2?
Yep.
My current is 3.54. So here's our curve, but I do have a question. Joe, good to see you. We got good to see you. I hope watch out for ERCOT because they just issued something, so you got to watch your electric prices this summer, Joe. If gas prices stay low and oil high, at what price do Huff and Puff injections using gas instead of CO2, like EOG's Karnes Eagleford pilot, start eating up gas to increase EUR of oil? That's actually a developing thought. I'm going to let Bill comment on that, but that's a developing thought. And I think that could be actually very interesting. And it goes hand in hand with something I heard about Canadian production years ago, which is out of Canada, you can have our oil or you can have our gas, but you can't have both. And it has to do with the same dynamic. But I'm going to let Bill talk about it because he gets a little bit geeky on the technicals on that one.
Yeah, on what they're using actually, what they're using CO2 as usually a tertiary recovery method where they're using the CO2 to move out the gas. I think there's a little bit difference, Joe, is the fact that actually they get some credits on the CO2 that gives them a little bit more price favorability. The other thing, gas and CO2, they're two different properties as far as attaching to the oil molecule. And so I think you could see it, but it's just we're going to have to see a pretty significant price decrease even from here for that to happen. And then it's only going to happen in certain parts where they have the ability to do that switch.
Well, wait a second. What do you think about this type of activity happening in the Permian? I mean, Permian already has negative prices.
It's not going to happen in the Permian because Permian didn't have the Huff and Puff storage.
Okay.
So, it would happen most likely, like you said, in the Eagleford. That's where you're going to see this start. And it's going to be places like that.
Right.
The Permian, I don't think the Permian, and Joe, you're the geologist. I don't know that the Permian has the rock that would take it. I think like the Anadarko does, but there's not enough gas and oil to make a difference. So I think the one place
storage maps. What?
Well, it's not just storage. They're using it for CO2 recovery. They're using it for oil recovery. So what they're doing is they're charging the formation with gas as opposed to CO2, but they're just not using. Joe, you got a point. Colorado City.
Commenting, EOG added 50,000 per well additional EUR. So that's.
I could see it happen in some of the CO2 floods out by Colorado City. I just don't know if there's enough. I don't know if they have enough gas infrastructure to make the change. That's my question.
Okay.
They could probably run it down those CO2 lines, but then you contaminate the gas pretty bad. So it would be an infrastructure challenge. Not that it couldn't happen, at the right price, everything happens.
Yep. So,
but yeah, it could be done in those Permian floods, on the CO2 floods.
At any rate, where Joe, you're spot on. Is producers are exploring other applications. We're actually currently involved in 3 different applications. One is on the hydrogen side, one is on the Bitcoin side, and the other one is on pure electric generation to provide electricity, because there's a lot of different applications there. So producers are seeking other applications,
Right.
and the main reason why is when you have $1.77 gas, and here in Waha, we are looking at minus 212. So we're at negative prices in Waha right now. And then when you take it over to Midcontinent at $1.77, Panhandle is minus 41. So you're at $1.30 before you have expense of gathering, processing, transportation.
And
So
there was a time when gas was, gosh, way back. Believe it or not, gas used to sell for under 25 cents an M. There in southern Oklahoma and northern Texas, they would use gas to flood the oil fields because later they could produce the gas and use it. So it's not an unheard of technology. It's just requires, for it to be profitable, it requires a significant amount of infrastructure.
Yep. So again, taking us back to where we sit on storage right now, my end of season storage is around 3.4, 3.5 TCF. Bill is a little bit lower. Most of the analysts are coming out at 3.9. And we have this mainly.
Isn't that why we're called Rogue?
Yes. Well, it has to do with our projection of production, and with some of the communication that has come out from Chesapeake, that has come out from Equitable. Equitable is curtailing. Now, I will say, if May were under 3.5 TCF, most of the cases that we look at for, let me draw this on here with a blue. Most of the cases when we're 2.5 TCF or above in May is between $1.75 and $2.75. So our price range is probably $1.75 to $2.75. We have some near-term targets that we share among our community. I do have a expectation. I'm not going to share it here publicly. If you're curious about it, you can email us and find out what that projection is. But by the time we get to June, let me get down here. By the time we get to June, this price is going to look a lot different. Let me go here. This price right here, by the time, and this price right here are going to look a lot different. And you'll have to come join us to see where that is. So we're not going to share that publicly, but we will discuss that. But the main factors that we're going to close in on we're going to land the plane. The main factors on the 2024 outlook are going to be in production trend, watching that every single week or daily if you have access to the daily information. Storage balance, watching that every single week. The May analysis, which is indicating that we're on the low side. At $1.75, we are on the low side, and I don't expect that to last. And then the LNG exports, those are the key factors and the key takeaways. And feel free to ask questions. We're going to stay on for 3 more minutes. So feel free to ask questions. Joe, thank you for joining. Thank you for dropping in, supporting us. Really appreciate your work. And I do want to get with you offline and see about scheduling something. So what are your thoughts, Bill?
Well, I think the production is going to be a big thing. It always is. I'm sort of a Captain Obvious there. The biggest thing I think is the appetite of producers to be able to hold on to this asset long enough to be able to do that. We live in a world where everything's evaluated on a 3 and 5 year basis. And if they hold off for 6 months, it could affect this type of returns. And I'm not sure they will, but you still can't just be selling at a loss. We might have to
Right.
get a bigger truck.
Yep. All right. So Joe has another follow-up question. Why more gas isn't condensed into compressed gas for vehicles where there's no pipeline capacity takeaway? I think this is actually an application that needs to have a renaissance. I saw this application in the 70s and 80s.
I drove my
And
first compressed natural gas car in 1988.
and you do see it. And I think this, I'll give my opinion, but then I'm really going to pass it over to the expert, Bill. I think my opinion is this needs to go through a renaissance. I think the predominant concern was the content under pressure and what that might do to what that might do if there was an accident. So I think that was the largest concern. But I'm going to pass it over to our resident expert, Bill, on that one.
So we actually sell that here in Oklahoma, Joe. You can pull into the gas station. I think OnQ has it. I don't think Quick Trip has it yet. And 7-Eleven doesn't have it, but OnQ, you can go and fill up at a CNG. There's a lot of different CNG stations where you can fill up. It is typically about 80% the price of gasoline. And so it has a lot of the same properties. Your mileage goes down a little, but not much. So like maybe 8%. So if you're getting 20% better price than 8%, there's a lot of it. It actually is better for your engine. It burns hotter. There's not a lot less gas left over. And so I think the biggest deal is that the conversion cost. And so it costs about $5,000 to $7,000 to convert over to CNG. And so it takes a while to get your payback. Usually it takes about 50,000 miles of driving on CNG to get your payback on your conversion costs. But it's actually, as you know, a lot of people say they're concerned about an explosion. And I sat there the other day and saw a guy smoking while he was filling his car with gasoline and thought, oh, okay, so we're worried about explosions yet, but yeah, someone needs to hose that guy down. Anyway, so it's not, in essence, a tank when it is punctured. It takes a lot to puncture these tanks, by the way. When it is punctured, it actually vacates the gas in like 30 seconds. So even if there's a flame, it lasts 30 seconds, and that's it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's under so much pressure. They're usually under about 2,800 pounds worth of pressure. And so it's just a big blowdown, and that's what it is.
Okay, so Joe has a follow-up question there.
It's compression, Joe. All the cost is compression. I mean, because you have to get it from water pressure up to about 3,600 pounds to be able to fill a tank.
According to Popular Mechanics, it is anywhere from 3,000 to 12,000. So that's what, but that may be a dated number. So I don't know when that article was written.
12,000 is way too much. I don't know what they're filling for 12,000. But to be perfectly honest with you, that's almost what's taking place with LNG. It's just taking place at a much colder amount that turns the gas into a liquid.
I mean, along this line, Joe, I think you're striking on something that is super important, which is making the natural gas portable, which would now create an alternative for combustion engines on gasoline and diesel, and converting it to natural gasoline or compressed natural gas. Does the mileage take a hit, Bill? Do you know?
Just a little bit, not much. Anywhere
so in other words, a full
8%.
tank will get you almost as far?
Oh, yeah, usually. So here's the difference. A full tank of CNG is smaller than a full tank of gasoline. Okay. So it takes up less space. And so, I believe it was Honda came out with a CNG vehicle. There's been a lot of different experiments in this. People like it. What's really interesting is that your engines will last roughly 40% more because they don't have all the carbon buildup that most engines have. And so back when I worked for Northern Natural Gas, we actually had CNG vehicles, and we did a lot of tests on these. Unfortunately, we did a few unplanned tests and crashes when one guy got hit by a truck, and the only thing that was taken off the vehicle was the CNG system because
Yep.
everything else was destroyed. And so, so it has more of an image problem than it does anything. And so the technology is pretty safe. It's safer than I think than liquid fuel.
Yep.
Now, when you go to liquid natural gas, we've seen a lot of these going on in the long haul trucks. In fact, as
Yep.
I used to sell LNG out of the plant in Kansas to truck stops through a company, and you talk about making a good price on gas. Well, it was index plus $5. It was great.
Absolutely. Let's see. Joe said lots of old pipelines are creating supply islands. That's already happening in Permian. It can happen elsewhere. There are some unfolding things on the regulatory side in terms of methane emissions that will impact these supply islands, and the impact is not being felt yet. And what that future looks like in 24 months from now could look a lot different. So
And actually have a big effect on oil.
Yeah. So let's see. I was going to remove this banner. So listen, thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in. And again, where we want to land is watch the production trend, watch the storage balance. Those are and the LNG. Those are the three factors you should key in on every single week. And if you're not keyed in on this every single week, I would shamelessly, I would suggest you tune in to Rogue Edge at only $89 a month. It's going to save you from searching all around the internet for what production is, what demand is, what storage is, what exports are, what pipeline exports are, and what the future supply curve looks like, plus with insight into the forward market. So,
and looky there, if you buy it on an annual basis, you can save even more money. We're already saving you money, and we haven't started yet. Yep. And so just remember, folks, when you go to looking for a reason for the markets to go in one way or the other, it's never one thing.
Yes.
You have to look at all the different things and see how they work in concert with one another.
Yep. And listen, if you found this valuable, please like, please share, please comment. All those things truly help so that we can get our message out. So thank you for tuning in. Hopefully this gave a little bit of insight into what the forward market has in play and what factors are going to be most important for the remainder of the year. Appreciate you tuning in. That's all I have. Any parting words, Bill?
Well, I tell you what, we want you to describe, because you never know when you're going to need what we have to offer you. So
I know we need the money.
Listen, we're not just doing this for money.
Listen, so reach out to us, connect with us if you're curious. Would love to connect with you. Hope you're doing great. I hope you have a fantastic day, and we will see you next week.
See you, folks.